Like, for example, Gomer at the beginning chooses lovers that bring nothing. They can't offer you anything. They can't offer you salvation, healing, because you can see she's destroyed.
No person is perfectly whole, and like each person has a scar. Remember when we were talking about
Yes.
scars? And, like your scars turn into a scab. You pick the scab, so it's physically a scar, but you have to accept it.
But everything comes at a cost. Is it costing you the reward of heaven, or is it costing you your soul? And these things are so heavy to think about because
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Walk Heights of Heaven. Today, we're going to be talking about Hosea and the love that God shares through Hosea and through Hosea to Gomer. Uh, it's going to be an interesting episode, one that talks about adultery, fidelity, and love, grace, all that. So, join us in this episode. Like, share, comment, and subscribe as well for all those amazing questions you guys have, or even answer the comments you guys want to leave to things that we say. So enjoy.
Let's go.
Yeah.
The Book of Hosea, right? This is a good one.
let's dive in, guys.
Where should we start? Where do you think we should start?
What struck you guys the most reading it?
I think what struck me the most about reading it is how Hosea and Gomer was a reflection of God and Israel's people. So Gomer is just a reflection of our humanity. That's something that struck me in it. How would you guys like to go deeper into Gomer being humanity and God as Hosea's love?
That's an interesting perspective. um, it showcases how we treat God as well. I think it portrays how we can betray so easily, manipulated by power, by richness, by belonging into a social group. But also, what struck me a lot about the Book of Hosea was the fact that the warnings. It's like God consistently through His prophet warns people of the harm they do unto themselves, and they never listen. And Hosea understands that even though they might change for a day or two or for a year, but they're going to go back to, their old ways, but also how they don't understand how hurt God gets or feels when He's betrayed with, you know, I think in the book of Hosea it mentions like they are rendering honors to Baal, and he feels heartbroken. It's he feels like he married somebody that's not worthy, and although he's pouring all his love uh, to the people does not. They don't know how to reciprocate. That's what struck me a lot about the book of Hosea. What about you, Autumn?
I felt a lot of grief reading this book, um, just because I think, like you guys are saying, so Gomer representing Israel and humanity, and then Hosea representing God. It really showed his heart in a very vulnerable way, where he is seeing his people put idols before him, and they're worshiping other false gods, and it hurts him. Like, he's giving us the Ten Commandments, right, to live by for the betterment of our souls, but also so we can thrive in a good relationship with God. And he's showing, like, when we break those commandments, like, we're breaking his heart because we're breaking our connection to him and, like, our relationship with him. And it just made me feel really sad to see God's heart broken, like you're saying, his sadness. And I also thought it was so interesting how he decided to use like sexual sin to portray his heartbrokenness, because so he's using Gomer, and she's a prostitute and an adulteress, right? So she's cheating on Hosea. And it made me think, like, there's a reason why sexual sin in particular is so severe, because it breaks relationship with God. when it's misused, like if it's not used in marriage, or you're practicing it outside of marriage, or even in marriage you're cheating on your husband. There's a consequence to it, and it's interesting how he used that to portray his hurt and his sadness and his betrayal, like how he feels, because those are emotions that we can all relate to, right? We can relate to feeling betrayed and jealousy and trust. How do we trust somebody? When you think about God thinking that about us, it broke my heart. And when you sexually sin or you misuse it outside of marriage, you're sinning against your own body. So like you're committing a sin against yourself, and it harms your soul because you're not able to receive God's love fully. And I feel like, so reading this chapter especially, I'm reflecting more on, that's why you said that. That's why you're setting that in place for us, because one, you want to be in relationship with us and communicate how much you love us. Two, the consequence of that is that we're hurting ourselves. So a lot of things like clicked into place reading this, but that's one of the aspects that struck me.
And also the ignorance of the people not knowing the harm they do to themselves first. Because, like you're saying, Gomer, maybe that was a norm during like that time, because remember they were manifesting love to Baal, and for Baal those are normal behaviors, and they have forgotten the ways of God. And the representation of saying, well, Hosea, you're somebody that fears me, and this is where I want to go with this. Is like to give him that task, and he's aware you're going to marry Gomer. You're going to take her as a wife, and how how you think that how you think that really how do you think Hosea took that?
Maybe it's like I think Hosea took it like, in a way, God always shows his people what's gonna happen, and Hosea must have been like, "Why give me an adulterous wife?" Or "Why should I pursue a prostitute?" Like, rather than pursuing the holy, right, or a holy woman, right, or something like that. Instead, God shows like his love also in Hosea. Like, Israel wasn't holy to them, to God in the beginning either. Israel was still worshiping Baal, the Egyptian gods, and worshiping pharaohs and the Egyptian pharaohs, rather than worshiping their own God. Uh, but still, God chose Israel, right? And God chose to love Israel. Um, so same way, like Hosea has to bring the holiness to his wife, to the person that he has to marry, love, and bear children with. Because that's what God did with Israel. Even knowing that Israel was unfaithful, Israel was a prostitute themselves. Like that's how Gomer and Israel refer to one another into it.
That's a good perspective. They sold themselves to the most powerful, because at that time they were debackling in between being with the Assyrian, which were the powerful country, and the Egyptian. That's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah, there is very, yeah, because God shows His love for them. He brings the holiness to them, even to places that were unholy in that area. But even then, he still feels the pain of Gomer. He still feels Hosea feels the pain of Gomer the same way God feels the pain of Israel every time they go through that. So what God does to Gomer, or what Hosea does, or in the poetry section, he talks about stripping her down until she was back to birth. It's basically throwing shame onto her until she recognizes that God, or Hosea provided her all that. She the not the other people that they went through, right? So God also shows that if there's a ways that we're unfaithful, adulterous, etc., to God, he will also strip down everything from us, same way that they did with Gomer, to show us that God is what's there. God is what fulfilled all of the needs were there. So I think Gomer as the prostitute, and Israel as the prostitute, and God's love of choosing. And he married Israel, and when you get married, you don't divorce. Right? It's like it's a hard one. So if he stayed in the marriage with Israel, even under the infidelity, to still show his love over, because he loved her a lot, and through love, he converted Gomer's heart back. Hosea converted Gomer's heart back to him, to the husband, through love. Because I remember we were talking about this off scene before, like with the man getting mad and stuff. Like it doesn't really do anything, you know, because it just comes from two hurt people. Um, but I have a question about Gomer's side, right? Like, what do you guys think was Gomer's pain that that Hosea had to try to heal in Gomer, and Israel's pain? Because if Gomer is like Israel, why is there pain in Israel that's not going towards God when they just want to live in union, like Hosea and Gomer wanting to live in union, and God and Israel wants to live in union, but there's a pain that that Hosea and God have to figure out for Israel.
That's a good question. I think I believe that Israel, just like Gomer, didn't understand their own value, and not understanding your own value makes you not love yourself, or make you believe that you love yourself by selling yourself through something that looks attractive, something that looks superficial, something that looks powerful, because you believe you can get something or a higher benefit from it. But what is God teaching us through the book of Hosea? It's like we are like prostitutes. And it's a strong statement. I know it's not easy to swallow, but that's exactly what he's giving us the example. We sell ourselves to the vanities that we see. And Hosea is a representation of God. And what does this mean? Like, even when you are selling yourself to somebody else or something else, I'm going to come to your rescue just by loving you for who you are and not for what you believe your value of the world is. And the investment versus selling. That's what I see in the book of Hosea. God says, don't sell yourself. You are an investment already. Why are you selling yourself to things that can't give you anything back in return? As a matter of fact, because I am invested in you, I'm going to love you no matter what you do. And I think that's the beautiful thing about Hosea. It's like he understands, and then he's getting that such a hard task. First, to love somebody that doesn't love you first. Then you fall in love with this person, and then they're betraying you, one after. As a matter of fact, his kids are named, yes,
Yeah.
after, and I'll let you respond to that one. So he's understanding that no matter what, the unconditional love of God is enough to support the suffering, to take the suffering. And I think that's what I, embrace so much about the book of Hosea is that. What about you, Autumn?
Um, well, I think it goes back to original sin, right? Go back to the garden, the relationship with God. That's always the struggle, like throughout the Bible. Like we as his people forget that we have an intimate relationship with him. Eve forgot. The word they use, it's like some Hebrew word, I think, but it meant like Adam was right by her elbow. Like they were so close when she was being tempted by the devil, and Adam didn't help Eve, and they were so close. Like to be elbow to elbow, you're like right there. So sometimes when I reread that, I imagine like Adam was far away, he didn't know. But in reality, he was right next to her and didn't help her. And so they both forgot their identity, right? And I think in Hosea, like the message that he's portraying to us is like Gomer forgot her identity. She didn't know who she was. She didn't know whose she was, and that's why she was selling herself. And then God is explaining to us, like, when you forget that you are mine, you end up giving yourself over to the things of the world. And it was hard reading that. I felt a lot of grief in my heart because, I said to myself, when do I sell myself out? Like, at a price? Like, when do I sell my relationship with God for a price? Like, I forget what verse it was, but he's explaining, right? Like, there's a price to it. And it makes me think of Judas. Judas sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Why do I trade God's love for my own selfishness or my own comforts when he's there and he loves me? And the names he gives the kids are very strong. Not my people, not pitied. Like that, that sums up how hurt he was to name them. I forgot what the third kid's name is. And I reflect in my own life, my own prayer life. Like why don't I make the extra efforts to get up earlier before like the rest of the world and pray before I do something? Or I can't give 5 minutes of prayer to God before I go do something because I'm too busy, or I don't have time to just stop and like give you that reverence that you deserve because you're my creator and you're my God. And it just, I don't know for you guys, but I was just reflecting on like, how can I love God and give him my whole heart? Just because too, like, our God makes himself vulnerable. He's a very humble God. He makes himself accessible. And he constantly is making himself accessible to Israel. And to see him hurt, it just like, it stings because he's saying, I'm God. I don't have to let you guys affect me, but I do. That's what I was thinking about.
And you said something very important too, like we become inaccessible to him. It's like we're the one that closes the door. And I think about Gomer as, like you were saying, somebody without an identity. But because she didn't even understand her true value, like, how can you sell yourself well when you don't even know your own value or your identity or your craft? And that to me speaks about like being lost. And I think Jesus mentions lost sheep. This is a great example of lost sheep. And it's beautifully put together and it's strong because God is being to be called a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
Comparing it to that, you got to see the magnitude of that word. It's like you guys are unfaithful.
Yeah.
You guys are people that can be trusted. That's what he's saying through this, and it's strong. It is really strong. If you read the book of Hosea, you're like, you can tell God is upset, but at the same time, he's not letting that affect the teaching he's trying to do with Hosea. And I don't know. It's like I don't know if I should feel bad for Hosea. What do you think he saw in Hosea? Like that's my question. You guys, like you, Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I know, right? That's such a hard thing too, because like when you marry someone, they become a reflection of you, and you become a reflection of them. And then if Hosea married like a prostitute and it's a reflection of him, then it's like, what is Hosea himself? I wonder if in Hosea's youth, he was probably a prostitute himself, praising Baal and praising God, not sticking to God and going to Baal. So that he probably knew what it was to be Gomer without having maybe he knew what it was to be Gomer in the spiritual sense, like Hosea to be Gomer, instead of and he probably just didn't know, like Hosea probably didn't know Gomer's experience in the physical sense, but Hosea probably knew Gomer's experience in the spiritual sense. So God's probably seeing that, just speculation, right? So God probably seeing that he would he probably use Hosea as that tool of like, I see that you were a prostitute before, praising Baal, but praising God, praising me, but then you chose me out of what? Out of the love and out of something else. So I need you to do that possibly for Gomer and use it as like a tool for Gomer and for the story we have today. Because his story is now coming down to us. And again, like this happened years ago, and like and we're still talking about it, right? And it's still impactful to the human archetypes, to our human society, our story, the human story in itself. Like things externally can change, technologies can change, um, buildings can change, the way we use things could change, but the human heart is kind of like it hasn't changed since the Bible. So we have it's where I question like where are we being prostitutes towards God and ourselves? And also how is He using us as a tool to help those that also didn't know before, right? Like Gomer is in her own ignorance of going to these other guys and seeing that everything comes from her husband, right? And it yeah, I just wonder where is our own ignorance and my own ignorance, right? When it comes to God myself, uh, where do I fall short, and how do I get back get back up there? Because we all fall. It's just a matter of like it's not a if we fall, we're human. I mean, reading the Bible all the time, like it hasn't changed, right? Like we're still human, uh, but in God's love.
You open a paradigm when you said something. I
Yep.
want to ask this to Autumn. It's the same kind of question, but I'm just going to add, why they chose Hosea, but also, do you think Hosea was the right person to portray this forgiveness story? Because I'm starting to see, like, how Hosea is about the power of forgiveness and how that can set you free.
Yeah. I love Hosea's like willingness to accept God's mission. Um, and he didn't question. He didn't question God. God saying, "I want you to take a prostitute as a wife," and he was like, "All right." He didn't question him. So I admire his obedience because he knew like God's ways were like wise. Like he knew it was going to lead to something. And Hosea is a reflection of God's mercy because while Hosea is in pain over her infidelity, then God says like, "Oh, well, you see how you're feeling, like that's how I feel about Israel." And then he goes to like bring back Gomer, and he's like, "And you're going to be a faithful wife now." Like he gives her that opportunity, and how many times does God give us another opportunity to begin, another second to begin? He gives us. Think about it. He gives us until our dying breath to like continue to go back to him. There are so many times in our life where like I'll leave him, or and then I'll go back to him, or I don't trust him, and he never tires of me. And he's like you still don't trust me? He's like, okay, like I'll show you why you can trust me again. Like he's faithful to me throughout everything, and like he's always gentle, and he's like, we're gonna heal this wound that you have, and we're gonna I'm gonna help you to trust. I'm gonna help you to like come out of your hiding. And Hosea goes and he gets her out of where she had ended up, and he brings her home. And that's what God does. Like through it all, there's a lot of beautiful imagery that God speaks through in this particular book, and then at the end, it's a reflection of His mercy and His. That's the story of redemption. Like God has mercy on us, and He gives us every chance to come back to Him. But I think so often, at least for me this time, like understanding it, it's always about like when I hear this, how He's rescuing us and He's giving us that opportunity. But we're forgetting, like He has a heart. He has a living heart, and He loves us, and He's hurt when we choose sin over Him. He's hurt when we don't value ourselves, and our bodies are, like, our souls are costly. it cost Jesus on the cross. That was a heavy price to pay, and he paid it for us willingly, like ecstatically. He wanted us to be in heaven with him, and he wants us to know like that we are loved and we are worthy, and we are called to be his children. And it hurts him when we settle for sin, and that's what I'm like struck on. How often do we think sin is what we deserve, and that's all that we're meant to do? Like the devil shows us. It's such a cheap, like, it's not even real. It's like an illusion. He shows you, like, oh, this is good. But he's like two sides of the sword. He'll tell you, like, hey, go do this really bad thing because he entices you, right? And then at the same time, as soon as you fall, oh, now you can't talk to God. Like, he hates you and you're terrible. So it's like he gets you to sin and then he stabs you in the face because he's like, oh, now you're mine. And it's like another opportunity where God is like, you were not made for slavery. You are made for freedom. You are made to be my children. And it's like, that's what's a constant battle behind the scenes that we don't see every day is the devil telling us, you're not worthy. You're not worth heaven. And then we have Jesus and he's like, you're worth eternity. You were worth me carrying the cross. You're worth everything, you know?
I love what you said, Autumn, because also one of the things I love about Hosea is that although he's going through all this pain with Gomer, he still doesn't forget his ministry. He's out there facing another unfaithful king, you know, and that king does not listen to reason. And one of the things that strike me a lot about the book of Hosea is that at that time, they were doing well when it comes to like finances. Everyone was making money, it seems, at that time. But the important thing of just because you're doing well doesn't mean things are right. And I love that part of the Hosea story because I will give you a personal thing that happened to me. You know, when I quit my last job, I met one of the persons that were at the higher up position, and they asked me, why they leave. You know, I explained to them, and they were like, yeah, but everything's going so well. It's like, well, just because there's wealth doesn't mean things are right. And that kind of like resonated on him. And he was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, just look at the you just got to go in there and investigate the behavior, because if you were to ask these individuals of if everything's okay, do you believe they have the integrity of telling you the truth? Because they won't, because they can't be truthful to themselves. If you do something wrong, you would normally take responsibility for it. But perhaps it will be wise if you don't ask them the question, you investigate. And I left that on that person's hand, right? So he can choose to do what's right or wrong. But this is the debate. Did he do something to make it right? Or did he chose to be like a Gomer?
Mm-hmm.
And just because things were, you know, working in terms of money, that's what, this store is making a lot of money. And that's more important than making things right. This is what opens my eyes a lot about Hosea's stories. Like, he's telling the king, they're going to come. The Assyrians are going to come and they're going to destroy everything. And everyone's like, yeah, but we're doing so much money. Why are you being so harsh with us? Why are you bringing these, you're prophetizing about this. Everyone here is in harmony. But like you were saying, they were in harmony with Baal, not with God. And God has warned them so many times. It's like, hey, just because it looks great right now, that doesn't mean it's right. There's going to be a time the Assyrians are going to come and they're going. And Hosea is like, I remember in the movie, his friend is like, yeah, but everyone is fine. He's like, yeah, but God is warning you. And the warning means that if you don't change, it's going to happen. So that was a really good point of reflection for me. It's like, what do you guys think about that? Do you guys see that happening oftenly where things are functioning and everything seems well, but they're just not right to the eyes of God.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. You can see that in some workplaces where they could they'll abuse and overuse some people, and then other people they wouldn't. Um, Kind of like with favoritisms in certain workplaces where, or even like even in some situations of like of business with even like when things are going good, but they could always be better and it's not being done right. And I even had to catch myself in some instances where I find myself wanting like greed, but I had to realize like, you know what, God's putting me on a mission that maybe even some people can't afford like a lot of like top tier stuff. And right now I'm in a position where I could give them that kind of service without them having to pay the top tier dollars in a sense. So like even now, like I'm like, you know what, like I don't want to be a Gomer, and I don't want to be like a king that's greed and just having like a thing like saying like things are going well, and I'm like, I want them to get better because I like always strive for the heights, always strive to reach the top of a mountain because like the climb is really the journey, and the climb is really the fun part. Uh, but then I'm also realizing like, okay, even within my climb, I can't leave like some people down here. Like, you know what, I can still provide like we were talking about this one in the other episodes, like providing like pro bono service and stuff like that. Like it's a similar way of something like that. Um, so I try to I even find myself in the Gomer in a situation or in the King's situation, but having to take myself off my own high horse and say like, no, I'm here for people, I'm here for God, and God's is putting me in this shoe to bless, and that's exactly what I'll do. I'll bless to my full ability, bless from my full heart, and I know that it will have an impact because I know like if it I know it'll have an impact. There's just no way that it won't. So like I have to be thankful that the instrument, right? So thank you God for that and to find the instrument. Yeah.
I would really definitely want to know your point of view because I will add even
Yeah.
I believe also in the book Hosea with the king and Gomer, they're confusing blessings with wealth.
Yeah. So there's like two ends of the spectrum. So like first where my mind is going is towards like the wealthy and like celebrity individuals. So um like I feel like most of them honestly, like I know we don't see what goes on, but a lot of them like sell their souls to the devil and they sacrifice immediately God and they start worshiping like false idols, and it's really sad to see because Jesus even had said like if you're wealthy, like it's harder for you to get to heaven. And those who have less, it's like easier. And when I reflect on that, he's not saying it's bad to have money. That's not it. He's talking about your heart. Like if you are desiring this and you're lusting after money and you've already made that your God, then you're like you have a long way to go, right? And when I look at Hollywood and what they promote, and that's a golden calf, right? They receive golden statues. Like they make it known who they honor and who they serve, and it's really sad because they can do a lot of good and they don't. Sadly, no one promotes God, right? If anybody like thanks God at an award show, they all like mock and they laugh and I think of them immediately because yes, they have the wealth and the riches now, but they sell their bodies, they sacrifice like their morals, a lot of them. We don't know what happens behind the scenes, but from what I hear, it's really bad. And they've given themselves over to like the spirit of darkness.
Mm.
But for like my scale, because I'm not up there, I think about, it's also conversations that you're partaking in. Um, where you end up sacrificing like your relationship with God for status, to look good, to fit in. Um, you know, what do you do behind closed doors? If do you cheat somebody out of something because you want the gain of it? Like all these little things add up in the eyes of God and to yourself. Like your conscience needs to be clean and pure. And that's one of the verses that really struck me. I think he said, like, is Israel not capable of innocence? And it also, I love one of the verses, I believe it's Isaiah, forgive me if I'm wrong. And he says, he who proclaims my innocence is near. So I was like comparing and contrasting those two because you need to have an innocent heart, a pure heart in order to see God. And so if that means you can't partake in certain conversations and you're mocked for it, then so be it, but everything comes at a cost. Is it costing you the reward of heaven or is it costing you your soul? And these things are so heavy to think about because, yeah, it doesn't matter now when you're driving your Lambo and you're like, you're making movies about sex, drugs, and money. But then when you're dying and you're like, wait, have like all my actions, have I built up the brick by brick the mansion in heaven? Or did I like dig myself deeper into hell? Like we need to reflect on these things. It's so good to reflect on it. So if you're like, if the price of your soul, you've already placed a price in your head where you're like, oh, like if I would do anything, I would do anything to get rich. I would do anything to be on the screen. You've already placed a price on yourself. And, that's not the way to do it.
It's funny you mentioned that because Hollywood had an issue with Epstein,
Hmm.
and a lot of people perhaps knew what he was doing,
Oh, yeah.
and it so many years passed to discover that he was abusing women in the industry, and that's what I see in the Book of Hosea. It's like how many people stood against that person to do what was right. And I believe that's the struggle of selling yourself too. Just because also part of selling yourself is not doing the right thing and not, putting out the voice that there's wrongdoing and you standing up for that. Um, just like the king, Hosea is telling him about what's coming. Just because you're prosperous doesn't mean that you're not going to be punished because you're prosperous. Your prosperity comes from God, and you're not even acknowledging where it's coming from. You're still sacrificing for Baal, right? And Baal is lying to you, making you believe that the prosperity is coming from him when he is not a creator. So to me, it's like, yeah, it's like, oh my God, like how blind can we be when it comes to like even selling ourselves? I was listening to something interesting yesterday about this actress that was talking about that she was married and her husband asked her that he just wanted a normal wife, like that wasn't on television all that. And one of the things she says, like, well, I'm not giving up that. So her conviction, and a lot of people are gonna be like, yeah, go girl, it's your conviction, your dream. But reality, what are you selling yourself? Who are you selling yourself to? Because yes, now you got the stardom. Now you remarried, and it's fine. But in the eyes of people, that is correct. But the question is, in the eyes of God, was the decision made the right one?
Yeah.
Because again, that could have been God also telling you, where is your heart? Is your heart with me? Or is it your heart you know, with things that have nothing to do with my kingdom? Like you're saying, how are you building your way up into heaven? And to me, it struck me right now what you were saying, and I listened to this testimony. Yeah, I think it was today or yesterday, and I'm listening to that, and the guy that's interviewing this person it's a famous person, and he's like, yeah, it's so courageous. For whom?
Mm.
And Hosea teaches us that what is courageous is to stand behind God, even when the king doesn't want to listen, even when the people are rebuking him. They're rebuking him. They're saying, "Why are you coming in here? You're crazy." They're against Hosea because like everything is looking good, and he's standing there for God alone. In the Bible, there's no other person standing beside him, warning the Israelites. And sometimes we don't measure that kind of bravery.
I think the question we have to ask ourselves too is, do we love our sin more than we love God? Because if he's telling us, I love you, you're worthy of heaven, give me your heart, but you're over here like, I love my greed, right? I love my vanity more than you. Like then it breaks my heart. I was watching the Wicked movie that came out.
Yes.
So those two actresses, I think her name is Cynthia, she's gonna play Jesus in a movie. And she's like very prideful. And it's like you've just been like blessed with this movie. It was your dream. And the first thing you're gonna do instead of thanking God is you're gonna mock him. Then you're gonna portray him in a movie. Like what and then you have the other one, Ariana Grande, and she's like, I'm a real witch. Like, that's what I do. And you have the occult. So they both like you can see where he blessed them because it was their dream since they were little to be in this movie. And he blessed them. And the way they repay him is to practice the occult and I'm gonna mock you. And it makes me think of this. Like they're worshiping Baal and he's like giving them blessing after blessing, and yet you're still like hardening your heart with him. You're like, no, I'm not even gonna look at you because I have wealth right now, and this is easier. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, oh, then you're proclaiming like I love my sin more than I love you.
And that richness is their God. The fame
Right.
becomes their God because they're continue to proclaim and attest that everything they've done is because of their efforts and not because. And we can see the difference, not only in Hosea but in the book of Joseph. Remember when God prepares you for a career like He did with Joseph. At the beginning, is all suffering, but at the end, you are so blessed that you never have to worry about all the years that you put in. It's like it pays off, and you're blessed even more. The book of Job shows us that too. I think even Joshua, yeah, he was 40 years in the desert. Like he must have had a PhD, like multiple PhDs of learning how to survive and being a general. Because that's what he was preparing himself into to conquer lands that were there for God knows how long, and we can see the difference on when God prepares you for a career versus when you prepare yourself for a career, where you lead yourself into the epitome of everything's great, everything's because of me, but then you crash. Why? Because you have access to drugs, you have access to alcohol, you have access to other channels that are destructive. But when God guides you, He humbles you first, disciplines you. So when you get into power, you understand that you are empowered to empower others. I don't know what are your thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna refer back over to Job too and Joseph. Like one of the things like I was gonna refer back to Job was when something bad happens, when you go through with God and He does strip you of everything, like He did of Job for example. That's why Job did something bad because like he did get stripped of everything, but it wasn't for the reason of the prostitution. It wasn't for
Sorry to interrupt you, just to add, but Hosea was also given a hard mission, just like Job.
hmm Yeah, yeah. Hosea was given a tough. That was a tough mission for him, definitely. Um, yeah, he was in the prison, right? No, that was.
Hosea, like, marry a prostitute,
Oh yes, Hosea. Yes.
fall in love with her.
Yes, I know that was crazy. I know it's a crazy mission. It's a hard one too, and that's a mission that he had to go on. And it was like to show the love that's there, but also the sadness and the pain that goes along with it, and the redemption Like he had to redeem Gomer from
Rescue
that.
her.
Yeah, rescue her from the belly
Damn,
of the
Kevin,
beast.
you every time both of you guys talk, my mind just goes crazy.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting, the redemption. That's a powerful point.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had to redeem her. I mean, and anyway, like in your marriage, you had to God was in relationship with Israel, and he had to redeem Israel too from Pharaoh. So he saved Israel from Pharaoh for the 40 years of the desert. Uh, but then it was supposed to be 2 weeks, but the 4 years lasted because they still were praising Baal.
Mm.
Right? So that was a way to show, like, hey, God was like, I'm the provider of this, not Baal, but then I'm also the doer of the 4 years because he just needs to cleanse. Um, but like, I want to connect it back to the kids with the cleansing in a sense, like, because it's hard. Like their names was kind of like the cleanse of like what was all the sins that Gomer went through. Like the name was kind of the cleanse.
The names were hard.
Yeah, they were hard. It was an outlet for Hosea. But
But Jose never think about this, Kevin.
yeah,
Think about God tells him give these names, and Gomer felt embarrassed about the names, but not him.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what do you think his relationship with God was like?
I think his relationship with God. It must have been a close relationship. I mean, it was filled in with
Or like
trust.
homies, like
Yeah, right. They're like homies, definitely. And it was filled with trust, but then it must have been filled in with like challenge in a way too, because it's like in a way God challenged Hosea to marry her and then to be the father of the three kids that isn't even his kid that he discovers. He's not even the father of the three kids. So it's like you're God challenges him to become a better person, an instrument, something that can reflect himself. Like if God wants a reflection, he chose Hosea to reflect him and how Hosea handles Gomer, because he's reflecting on how God handles Israel.
hmm.
And it shows him to be a reflection somewhere along
Love that. Love that. What are your thoughts, Autumn?
We have a God who comes to rescue us. I like to just sit in that because his redemptive love, like you are redeemed. Your sin is not your final word. Like his love for you is. And he doesn't leave you tangled up in your own mess. He comes for you. And the names too are so specific and heavy. And I feel like it's almost like he was giving birth to the sorrow that he was feeling. And, but like, 'cause then he was talking about raising up Judah, right? So he was condemning Israel, raising up Judah. And then as I was reading, I kind of was drawing like parallels between Hosea and then Song of Songs. Because I'm like, this is so interesting. Like, God is talking about this beautiful mercy, right? His merciful love, it's a redemption story. And then in Song of Songs, it's like how much he loves us. And it's very, like, there's beautiful imagery in that Song of Songs, but it's primarily about his love for us. And I'm like, he just keeps telling us how much he loves us. And how do we repay him? Do we give him our trust? Do we give him our whole heart? Are we obedient to him? Do we trust him? Or do we keep repaying him with mistrust and, walls, more walls, a hardened heart? So I just, honestly, like, it's so rich to bring into, like, personal prayer because my desire is to give him everything. And that happens inch by inch, he works with what you give him. You give him an inch, he takes a mile, and it's so beautiful. Um,
what he also acts is when you give everything too, it's like sometimes God will answer that, like he'll go like through like bear it all. and he'll take you to the desert. Sometimes I think it's approaching God. There's a bravery in that too, because God is gonna do those things. He's gonna put you on those trials, tribulations, and tests. I mean, Baal might keep you in your comforts. Like Baal might keep you with those wealths and without doing it right. Right, but like God would show you the ways of not only His love, but how you can endure and strengthen through sufferings. Like God isn't only about happiness. Maybe Ball's all about happiness. But like God, like He'll show you what we ask, we shall receive, and if we ask Him to take, like we will receive that, and it'll go all the way back out. Like, and when you walk, and it is true, when you walk that in, she will take that full mile with you. Um, but yeah, he'll take us to those deserts, and he'll walk beside us in those deserts, because it's important. I mean, he walked through Hosea in the desert with Gomer, definitely for sure, because that's not an easy moment, right?
And think about it too, like why do we question God so much? But when the father of lies is talking to us or trying to manipulate us, we're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go your way. But with God, it's like, well, explain this to me. Explain why I have to do this, and tell me exactly when will this end up my way. But with Him, it's like, okay, yeah, like I don't understand that, like.
Ice cream or apple?
But you see what I'm saying? Like He wants the destruction of our souls, but we don't question it. Like when we're in temptation, we don't take out the sword and fight the good fight. But with God, it's like we put the razor up to Him, and we're like, "Is this gonna cost me?" But we don't ask. We don't ask the evil one like, "This is gonna cost me." No, we don't say no.
But it's like salad or French fries. And it's like it's those hard. It's you gotta make the choice on what's healthy, good, rather than the comforts. And
I like what you guys are saying because Baal is the lovers. And what does the lover represent? Like you're saying, comfort, easy access. With marriage is a decision. You when you decide marriage, you decide to love somebody and stand by that person, good or bad. And it's a commitment. And it takes a lot of sacrifice. With a lover, it's just an easy access in and out. And what do they offer you at the beginning? Is the very best, right? It's the tip of the iceberg that you see that 10%. In marriage, what you always see is the 90% sunk under the sea, the trials and tribulations, the desert. And I think it's a beautiful representation of Baal being the lovers of Gomer, offering moments of pleasure, but not a commitment. And it's when you guys were talking, I was like, this was coming into my head. It's like, you guys are hitting on the nail. Why? Because that's what Baal is. He is the lover. He's the one trying to take you from that marriage with God. Hosea was married to God. That's what I start to see. It's like he was faithful because he knew God, would do anything for him. He understood, and this is where I want to take this. You know, Gomer goes with his lover, and his lover gets tired of him, like Baal and the devil does. That's what the devil does to you. Once he gets tired, he doesn't need you, tosses you out like you're not worth anything. But then who comes to the rescue for him? Gives everything. Remember, Hosea was a man that didn't have a lot of money. But when Gomer is being sold to slavery, right, she's put into being sold because her lover didn't want her. What does Hosea do? He bets everything because he bets even more than what they're asking for, and that's where the redemption is. What do you think of?
It's so interesting too how the Holy Spirit works versus the evil one. Because if you are engulfed in sin, right, the devil leaves you alone. You have false peace. So you may be wealthy, you may like have everything going well for you, But for him, he's like, oh yeah, she's damned. Like, I don't have to do anything. And he gives her a false peace, so that person never feels like they go, "Oh, everything's going well." So how will the Holy Spirit break into her heart? He shakes things up. So he'll try to get them out of that comfort, and he comes in and he shakes the ground, so that he can break in. Now, if you flip it, you have somebody who's holy, who's living a holy life in the eyes of God. The devil goes after that person and will try to like shoot them like a sniper and tries to like get in there, shake you up so that your faith gets tested, and then he'll like try to shake you up. Versus God gives you real peace. He gives you his love. He breathes his life over you. It's so interesting how the two work and how the Holy Spirit works in different ways. And I think for Gomer, God broke into her and he was like, yes, you've been sinning. Yes, you've been unfaithful, but I love you and I'm still here. And he broke through that false peace that she had, or even like her own vanity and wanting to be adored and loved in the wrong places. And he's like, you don't need to search. I'm here. And I think, how many times do I go off on searches trying to find meaning for my life when he's right here? He's telling me what I'm worth and who I am. And like to let him breathe life over me and let him proclaim his glory over me. Like, it's not hard to do that, and yet because he won't let you sit in your pain, that's what we try to avoid. Because he's like, we need to pull this root up and out so that your vines don't continue to grow towards sin. Like, you go and you look for sinful things to soothe that ache, it's never going to soothe it. But if I pluck it out and I come in and do the heavy work, we're going to heal it forever. And like, you're going to be with me and we'll be okay. Versus the devil will like keep lighting your wounds on fire and you're like, oh, it hurts, right? Like, we're going to keep making it hurt by doing horrible things to yourself. And the more you sin and you're in pain, the more you're going to try to do like worse things to yourself. And it's such an ugly rabbit hole. And God, he hates that we go through that. And he bursts in. He's like, no more. Like, he's so protective of us. I love that he gave the image of the lion. And he said, like, I'll rip open, like, he gave that imagery. And I'm like, wow, like, he does that for me. Does that for you. Does that for you. He wants to protect us from evil. Like,
Definitely, and also like the Book of Hosea, I think, teaches us what marriage really should look like. Because Hosea, at the end, he gives it all to get back his wife that always belonged to him to start with. Like, it's not like Gomer wasn't part of him, but even though when she chose to go outside of the marriage, he still bet everything on her. And I believe it's a beautiful story of what relationship should be about. Like, how often when we make a mistake does somebody come out and say, hey, I'm still fully invested, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to invest more because you need that, because you're broken, because I know that your past life has rendered you to behave in this way, but I know that I can be an instrument of God to take you to a place that is unknown to you, and where you can heal, where you can find your true identity, true love. And it also takes me to think about this, and you spoke about this the other long time ago. I think one of our first podcasts, Gomer, beauty versus vanity.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that? I don't know who wants to go first. Either you, Kevin, or Autumn.
Yeah. Maybe Gomer was like more vanity than beauty. Like, just because striving for more, in a sense. Like when I think about beauty, I think about like a rose bush, like beautiful, like it looks amazing. The rose bush still has like a little bit of thorns, right? But it's beautiful. But then when I think of vanity, I think of vanity like a vine, like vines. They look pretty, but then they just spread out everywhere. Like it's more chaotic than a rose bush. Like a rose bush is like it's beautiful potential, where vanity is like a vine that's just chaotic, will go anywhere, just look. Um, so that's what I think. Like Gomer was like she was like a vine. She just went around. She went around in the garden, um, and then she as she went back to Hosea, uh, she actually was finding loyalty and found loyalty in Hosea and gave him loyalty. That's when the vine started turning into a rose bush. Um, that's when it started looking like more beauty. But your thoughts on beauty and vanity? I feel that you have a spin on it that like
Yeah.
you know natural beauty. So
I'm gonna look for chapter 14, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
listen.
I forget who this was. I think it's Thomas Aquinas, but we'll like fact check me. But I believe it was him. The devil tried to tempt him with a woman, and he threw himself into a rose bush. It's funny that you're saying this. And he like rolled around in thorns, um, so that he wouldn't be tempted. And then there's another scene. I forget his name. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry guys. And this devil tried to tempt him. I forgot who. Like they brought a prostitute to him, and he took when you stoke a fire, so there's that like metal thing.
Metal thing. Yeah.
He took it and he didn't hit her, but he was like he got her out of the room, and he was yelling at the people who brought her, and he was like yelling at them, and then he carved with the metal thing. He carved a cross into his door, and then he was like praying because like that's how much like lust and vanity like it's repulsive to God. And I love those two examples because they're from men. And I think like our society today, like they don't give men the credit that's due. Like they think like oh like they think with their private parts and they have no brains to resist temptation. And then you have these two men where they literally were like rolling around in thorns because he was like, I'm not a slave to my flesh. And then you have the other guy who took the medal and he's like, absolutely not. And he's carving a cross into the wall. It's such a beautiful reminder that we're not a slave to our temptations. We're not a slave to our flesh. We can say no to our flesh. And that's why vanity is not beauty. Beauty is always the good and the true and the beautiful. And beauty points you to God. You know how many people are converted through beauty, whether it's through a sunrise or like so many instances where God speaks through beauty because beauty is always a reflection of God. I think vanity is a reflection of the devil, and you always know. Like I feel like you can spot vanity versus beauty because it's a false perception of something. It's when you revere yourself so much and you present yourself in this way, or I'm trying to think. There's a movie where it's a cartoon, it's a cheesy cartoon, but they presented it so well where this man is like standing in line to go to confession and a woman walks. So basically you see like this woman walk by and he like follows her with his eyes and she's wearing like a mini skirt and heels and she's walking and then the further away she walks out of his sight, she morphs into a demon and he's like ugly and I'm like, oh, that's so perfect because
woman in the red dress, the Matrix.
Yeah.
right. But in vanity, like it doesn't push you or how do I say this? Like it doesn't motivate you to do good. It motivates you to do bad. And beauty tells you you're worthy, you're capable. It's almost like you sparkle like with a gold like it's a reflection of God himself. And I think for Gomer, she was looking for that validation in the wrong places, which we all can fall into, instead of going directly to God and saying to him, that's what I love about Jesus in the agony of the garden. He knew what was coming because of his divinity. He could see the suffering he was going to endure. And yet his humanity, because he was perfectly human as well as God, he felt what we feel when we know suffering is coming and we're like afraid. What did he do? He got down on his knees and he leaned into prayer. He didn't run away from God. And he was like, Lord, like, he praying, like he's sweating blood because he knew it was coming. And yet he showed us when you are tempted, when you feel far from him, like you don't feel his presence, you pray even harder to him and you ask him for his help and his intercession. He did it so beautifully and perfectly. Like he didn't run away from God. And think about it, his disciples fell asleep on him in the garden and he asked them to stay awake. And when we are going through our sufferings and our temptations, it's to ask God and tell him, give me more strength, give me more courage, help me to see beauty in the right places, help me to not look for validation in princes of the world, but ask you, who am I? Speak truth over me. Like, why don't we do that? Why don't we arm ourselves with the word of God? Because he asks us to do that. So when we go through temptation, because we all will be tested, right? We know what he sounds like. When you read the Bible, you're like, oh, that's your voice. Obviously, you're not telling me I'm ugly and I'm horrible and like you're never gonna make it. Like, whose voice is that?
Whispering, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because also I think about, like, for example, you're saying beauty and how easily the devil uses it for vanity, and you see it everywhere. For example, now that the platform of YouTube and Instagram is open, you can see how a lot of people now have a platform that they can speak of about things they're interested in, and just go to a network. What do you see there? Beauty, beauty, beauty. People that have a aesthetic that is close to perfection. Hollywood is a representation of that, with very small exceptions. And how do we sell our beauty to serve something that is not for God? And we get easily manipulated into using beauty or even being used through beauty to fulfill, the not the will of God. And you see this every day, like like I said, just watch the Oscar.
Yeah, or even look at the commercials. Like look at ads. Ads are all about beauty stuff.
Yeah, like the really good looking female, the guy with the amazing white teeth. Like, think about it. There's billions of people on the earth. Do you really think 10% of the people look like that?
I do want to add, beauty is a reflection of the soul, and you guys just sparked this in me because lust is not beauty. Like, even though these actresses are going on TV and they're in skimpy outfits, that's not beauty. I think Mother Teresa was so beautiful, and yet her wrinkles were so deep into her skin, and like she was very like she was tiny, and she was very always in prayer. Why was she beautiful? Because she was always in prayer. Because of the way she loved others and the things that she spoke about. Every time you heard that woman speak, she directed you to the Lord. So she was like, if you're seeing me, it's not me, it's him shining through me. Like, that's beauty. When we don't, and that's vanity. Vanity is, look at me, I'm right here.
I'm the center of attention.
Beauty is, it's Jesus through me. Like, he's shining through. And Hollywood has it wrong. Like, putting women in degrading outfits, and you teach these women to show more skin because you'll be considered worthy. It's not true. When you see a modest woman who's dressed beautifully, what shines out of her is her soul and her smile, and like you can see what resides in her. Versus a woman who has like everything out in your face, you're not looking at her heart. Or if she's deep in sin, what's coming out of her? Like she wants to lead you towards sin. You have to. Discernment is so important, and I think like our kids today, they need to be taught God about God. They need to be taught like you are worthy and you're valuable, because these little kids are on their iPads from as young as like 3 years old. They're seeing subconsciously like, okay, show skin, and everything is an innuendo. Like where's the purity in our generation today?
And I want to bring this topic because, like, what you say is true, but could the book of Hosea also be about how men need to protect women? because, for example, Gomer and beauty is easily manipulated, and it's easily used, and it's easily sold. And the job of a man is to rescue. First, first, you as a man be in connection with God to be able to rescue others. Like, and for example, Gomer being somebody that was accessible to others. Like, how to even go out there for somebody that perhaps everyone believes that doesn't have any chance of being with the Lord. But then if you prepare yourself, how you can rescue somebody, and how do you protect beauty? How do you protect somebody that doesn't understand their value? You know, I also see that in the book of Hosea. It gives us like a little uh, text by text on like how do you protect that woman that is so vulnerable, that has been manipulated, that the devil has whispered in their ear that their vanity is what needs to be sold, and for that they are worshiping Baal in the process without knowing, because that there's ignorance. They people believe like, well, I pray to God, but I dedicate 100% of my time to looking great. You know, yes, you're giving yourself into the vanity which doesn't belong to God, like you were saying. You know, what are you guys? What do you guys think about that? Like, do you think it's a kind of like a blueprint of how men need to treat their women?
Yeah, yeah. Then you have the men that are faithful, that keep their women safe, protected. Then you also have the men that aren't, and they abuse and they buy and they go through you're like the men that Gomer were with. She was a prostitute, so they bought her through. Like they put down the money for her. Versus versus Hosea, versus the one who was trying to protect Gomer in that. Like men do have to protect their woman around. Like what I really like about like sometimes about like the Muslim culture and stuff like that is like they do that a lot. Like their culture is it really is like protecting their woman. Like especially with like we talk about like the hijabs and stuff like that. But like really those hijabs and stuff are there to protect the men from sin and to protect their women from men's sins. And because they know the sin of the eye, the sin of the thing. So it's
No, go ahead.
it's very but I mean it's seen as degrading at a point because then their beauty can't really like show and stuff like that. But like that's really like the point of it. It's so you're not distracted by the beauty. You're not distracted by the woman. You're like you look right into you look at it's just their eye. You know, like even if and to the more extreme side, like you don't even see the eye. It's another human energy. Um,
But it's interesting what you're saying, because I think what Hosea is saying is that Gomer was the one seeking.
mhm.
So even if she was with the like a veil or anything, her eyes were the sinning eyes. Because also like, it's a really good perspective. I like what you're saying is like to protect from temptation, but temptation, it goes beyond what you can physically see. It's also what's in your heart. It's also how you think. What do you believe in? Do you fear the Lord?
Yeah.
And even if you fear the Lord, you will still be tempted, because guess what? You're human. You're made out of flesh. You know, and there's nothing wrong. Let's say you love autumn. We know that. And let's say you see a beautiful woman. There's nothing wrong if you see her face and you say, God created something beautiful. But it's different than you go in there and say, well, Autumn probably choke you as the Undertaker, you know, and I'm just
In the arm,
why are you looking at? But it's different if you look at that person from head to toes and you desire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with acknowledging beauty. There's the same thing with Autumn. Autumn might find I don't know, George Clooney being attractive, and one day she was like, wow, he's good looking. She's just I would say acknowledging the fact that he's pretty.
Yeah. Like when you see a flower somewhere.
Exactly,
Like,
but not to the point where like, oh, I need to get his number.
Stuff.
Yeah, I need to, go seek him and go further and being tempted on your own.
Mhm.
So I do believe there's a big difference on that
Mhm.
because like what
I
you
see what
need,
you're saying.
yeah,
What
what
you're saying.
exactly
That-
your protection should be Jesus
Yes, yes. I
and
see what
not the
you're saying.
physical veil or like what you're covering yourself with because you could still you can still be tempted because you want you in your curiosity is like what's in behind those clothes.
Mhm.
And that I think is what Jesus is trying to tell you through Gomer. It's like Gomer is the temptation roaming around. She is the one that wants the lovers. So she's also part of the snatching system. It's not only the lovers snatching her, but she's also looking for all these things, right? And she's also acquiring that vanity and giving vanity to them. So as much as they're making her sin, she's making others sin too, because she's giving herself up to people and not to God. And Hosea, when he's teaching, is like, I'm loyal to the Lord. For that I am loyal even to a woman that is not loyal to me, because the love that God has for me is unconditional. Now I'm limited, but through God's unconditional love, you know, um, I'm gonna love her, and that love is gonna make her one day reflect and change her ways, little by little. That's the other problem we have. A lot of people believe that God just snaps His fingers and boom, you're just magically this other person. No, God wants you to learn the lessons through processes, and He puts you in the process. He's going to make you really understand, reflect, and then you learn how to act upon what you have learned.
Mhm.
So he goes from theory to reflection to self accountability and then practice. So you can be wise about how you do these, and that's what I believe the temptation part. And I get what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Obviously,
Now I feel like
obviously, I'm not, also, I'm sorry for what I'm going to say, but like, you know, think about, also what Gomer signifies. Could it be that the temptation of Gomer is like what we see today in terms of like, women wearing something that is so, I don't know, sensual. Again, I'm not here to question how you dress, but sin goes in two directions: how you view and how you want to be viewed as well, right? So I think that the extremes are what I learn in life is the extremes are bad. I respect whatever other cultures and religions practice. That's good for them. It works for them. But is that the real preventive system? No. It's your heart and your relationship with God. And then the same thing on the other side. If you don't want to be like, what are you dressing up for? To tempt, right? So
That's a great. Yes, you're right.
take it all. And but I love your perspective. Hey, I have a lot of respect for what you were saying.
I fully see what you're saying with the veil part, but like without it too, like it is that the heart. You had to defeat the temptation here. So it's like
Hmm.
you can still go beyond the veil and be like, oh, what's beyond those
Yeah.
stuff? It's fixing it in here first. I see it. On point. On point.
Hmm.
Go ahead.
I love that you brought it up too because, so like in the Catholic Church, um, when a man and a woman go into the church, a man doesn't cover his head, but a woman can veil, and
Mm.
there's only like life giver's veil. So you have the altar that's covered, and then you have a woman who's covered because they both give life, and that's why a man doesn't veil. And women are reverenced. Women are beautiful creatures, and beauty, like you're always drawn to beauty. right? I was gonna say the same thing. Like if we're in a restaurant, like we're all drawn to a beautiful woman who walks in because she reflects the heart of God. That goodness, truth, and beauty exists, right? So you can't help but acknowledge, like, my fellow sister in Christ, you are beautiful. You know, like God just radiates out of you, and you can see it, and it's like a reminder that like heaven exists. And I think, like for my Muslim sisters, like you can't be afraid of beauty. And again, when you are following the ways of God, there's always freedom. He gives us free will. There's always freedom. So the fact that like I feel like almost they're regarded as like their beauty is not allowed to be recognized at all, and it's sad because women are beautiful, and there's like two extremes to it. I think that's an extremist version of modesty because versus also like walking around like half naked. They're both disordered. Um, versus like in the middle, and you just phrased it perfectly too. Like, why? What are you dressing up for? Is it you're dressing up because you know like a guy is going to look at you a certain way or desire you sexually, and that's what gives you value, or are you dressing in a feminine way because you know it makes you feel beautiful and you're glorifying the Lord? Um, and like there's like a modesty check that like me and my friends do. It's like, oh, would Mary wear that? The Mother of God, would she wear what you're wearing? Um, and like all of my friends are so beautiful, and like I love like rejoicing in that beauty because I'm like they're each a different reflection of the heart of God, and it's so beautiful. um, but like when we veil too, or like when you're veiling, it's because like you know that you're sacred and reverenced in the heart of God. And I forget where it is between Adam and Eve, but it always starts with them. I'm sorry guys, but because of the effect of their original sin, like there was always going to be an imbalance between man and woman. So like a man, he'll always like. So I know women don't like this, but we do have a responsibility in the way that we dress because we do know that our fellow like brothers can fall. You know, and you don't want to like. I know women are like, I'm not dressing for no man, and then they're walking out here half naked, and then it's like I shouldn't be responsible if my shoulders showing, and they're like, oh, you can't handle it. But the truth is, like, we have to be like responsible for not leading each other towards sin. So if I can like dress in a beautiful way that's not going to entice my fellow brother to like lust because I don't know what he struggles with, and if something, an image can stay in your mind for a long time, and the devil can bring any image to your mind at any random time. It happens, like he likes to do that during mass. So like if you watch something inappropriate and then like the Eucharist is being raised, he'll put it in your mind, so then you feel unworthy. But like those images stay. Like, and so if you give him access to your imagination, like he'll do that. But it's beautiful to dress with a modesty in mind too, of being like, I'm representing myself and God, and I want to like bring others towards His heart. There is a beautiful responsibility in that. But yeah,
Uh, it's I believe like it's people would see this as controversial. We're not saying how people should dress. What you should do is check your heart with God, and that will give you structure on what is right and wrong, and that should put yourself in check. Because at the end of the day, like I'll give you a good example. Now that my back is better, I'm back at the gym, and even before that, I was always at the gym, and you can see the evolution of women dressing at the gym. And I don't see any wrong with women wearing tights. I'm not there to check on women how they dress. I literally go there. I work out, and I want to go get out of there because I'd rather be outside of the gym. I just go there to do my workout, right? And there's nothing wrong. They go with their tights. There's some women that have a nice body, and you happen to like be lifting weights, and you see, but again, you're not like laser focused. You just you unfortunately got to glance because they're right in front of you, and but you focus on your exercise, but then you see the difference of other men, and I can tell you, and even some women, how they were just like just focus. Yeah, they stalk, and it's almost like you feel comfortable even though you're not even looking at it. You understand? Like as a guy, I'm like, man, this is why women have this image of us like we're creeps, or when we go on a first date, they don't feel safe, because we have put this stigma on top of ourselves, and it's not everyone. It's not fair to judge everyone and the same, but you see this, and this is what I think Hosea is teaching us too. If you're a man, just focus. If you have a woman, just focus on that. Like if you wanna, I don't know, like have a glance of nudity with somebody, do it with your wife.
Yeah.
Do it with that person. Go home, and because you have the freedom with that person to do all these activities you wish to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But outside of that, keep your eyes on your woman and keep your eyes on God. And that's essential. And Gomer didn't know how to handle this.
Yeah.
This is why Gomer's eyes were everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
uh, seeking temptation, seeking, lust. And you see this, even if it doesn't have to end on an act of sexual activity, but it happens. Like I tell you, at the gym, you see this every day. Like guys can't like stop looking. You can't blame the females for wearing tights because that is the proper workout attire. Now it's different if they're wearing some really
Tights with holes in them.
or shorts like I saw, like you can see, excuse my language, some butt cheeks. That's the responsibility. I think there's a difference. If you decide to like just go with your tights, go, cool. But now if you're showing half of your butt, that's a different story. Now you're really looking into people looking at you, and then when they look at you, then you get also upset knowing that you did it for the wrong reasons, and now there's a drama. And I seen this happen, and yeah, you're checking on me, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so embarrassing, right? And the guy doesn't know what to do, but at the same time, like they're both to blame.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, there is a responsibility in what you wear. Like, that man, he's gonna have that image of you in his mind. Going back to the question you asked about, like, do men have a responsibility to protect their women? I would say yes, because like, are you protecting like a woman's virginity? Are you protecting her purity? Are you like pushing her to sin? Um, those are questions that men have to ask themselves, because I feel like our generation right now, it is so broken because we are looking at, I mean, any movie that you watch right now, there's so much sexual content in it that, like, men and women, they're both like, you just have it in the back of your mind, like everything is hypersexualized, the bodies are constantly being revealed. You have like, I always go back to Kim Kardashian because she just like is the poster girl of it, but like constantly like altering your body, like the BBL was in, and then she like got it removed, and now she's like a stick figure, and like you're giving the wrong messages to women about their bodies, but also that you have to exploit your body in order to be considered worthy, and yet like there's a responsibility on both halves. But I think like Hosea showed so perfectly, like he's a steadfast figure because he loved his wife no matter what, and he went after her when she forgot who she was, because she ultimately was listening to the like lures of these other men, and she fell to that. And you can think about today when you're with a coworker, or if you're like, I don't know, you have these run-ins with people. Are you engaging in flirtatious conversation because you like the enticement of like being wanted? People can overlook that. The desire of being wanted is what lands people in a lot of sinful situations. It like, who are you looking to fulfill who you are? And I think we don't give men a lot of credit today. Men are noble creatures. Like, they are disciplined. They're like steadfast. You guys like have a lot of beautiful qualities, and I think our generation society has stripped men down to like this figure that is a slave to his passions, can't control himself, needs 50 women in order to be considered a man. And it's not true. Like, a man is there to be a protector. He's there to be a father, to teach wisdom, and to guide his house. Like, the man's supposed to be the priest of his household, right? So that means like you look like your wife looks to you for guidance, for discernment, for leading the family in the right direction. And he's the head, so that means like he's guiding the family to goodness. And the woman, she's the nurturer, like she's the heart of the family. She's the maternal figure for the children. Like both equal each other. And yet, are we telling our men protect with our women? You know, like are we telling them like look out for your the women in your life, or even just strange women, to like not like diminish them down to just their body. And it goes for women too. You're not just your body.
I have a question for Kevin. Uh, because like we men are seen like promiscuous in every aspect. We're judged and labeled that way. Even if just it means because somebody sees beauty or they go into vanity. But I do believe, like, for example, and this doesn't make it right either, but there are other groups that are way more promiscuous, that are highlighted because they are promiscuous and they are seen like, yeah, do it, that's freedom, and they're hyped up. So we have a double moral about that. When it's done by a man, it's bad, it's super bad, and it's highlighted as you're the worst things in society. But when another group does it, they're way more promiscuous and they're known by it. They're highlighted as empowerment, and that also gives you the understanding that, like, when you have moral uh, double standards, like, how is that fair to one group or another? When you're highlighting the same crime, but then here you're slapping them on the hand all the time, which I believe both of them are wrong. My question to you is this, Kevin. Hosea teaches us another great valuable lesson. Going into a relationship when you are healed. Gomer is not, she's broken. She's not ready for a relationship. Hosea teaches us that he is. What are your thoughts about that?
I know, right?
I'm sorry for the tough question. I'm sorry for the tough question, man.
No, I love it.
Because most people go into relationships not healed.
I know that's yeah, right. So when you go into a relationship not healed, it's gonna be something that's broken. Entering it, and you still gotta fix it within. And if you enter it in with some brokenness, it might spill into the other person's cup. It might make them broken as well into it. So it's always a risk, right? It's always a risk when going into a relationship because you never know.
That's great. Yes.
Thank you guys. Thank you. So it's like whenever you go into a relationship, it's a risk. I mean, like no person is perfectly whole, and like each person has a scar. Remember when we were talking about
Yes.
scars, and like either the scars turn into a scab. You pick the scab, it's gonna be a scar, but you have to accept your scars, right? So each person has a scar. Sometimes those scars are fresh, and sometimes those scars are old. It's about accepting those scars and living with those scars. But it's healing scars. You don't want to get blood on the other person, because that's the hard thing. And you don't want to get the same and cause them to have almost the same scar. So I think healing in a relationship is important, or at least one person to have at least that version of them of their healed selves, and even the other person might have a version of a healed self that they gotta get for it, right? So they both give in their healing process. Uh, like Gomer wasn't healed in their relationship with God, but Hosea was healed in the relationship with God. So like Gomer and Hosea were kind of like that perfect matches together because like I remember we were talking about at the beginning of the episode a little bit like Hosea was able to provide the holiness to Gomer to so she could see the holiness from it and have that change of heart. So that he saved her from with the holiness. So you need a version of yourself that's healed before entering a relationship. Because then if you enter it broken with scars that are fresh and even with scars that are just constantly getting picked, ones that haven't healed up and just left a blemish, um, though that blood might and it probably will spill over into the relationship into the next person. So I think that's like at least one person needs to be able to assist putting on the band-aids.
Good. What about you?
Oh, you started laughing.
Let's go.
I think we've all been broken by things in our lives, and we all are on a quest to healing. But if you get into a relationship, which I think this happens so often, even in marriages, this is why we have so many divorces. Let's say we take somebody who has a horrible self-esteem, who never had like someone stable in their life. You get into a relationship and you think, I need
The happy dance.
you get into a relationship and you think this person is going to complete me. They are like anything they say that will like fill my cup up. You end up idolizing that person, and they're gonna disappoint you because they're human. Like it's just meant to be, like bound to be. You will disappoint each other. Like when you get married and you have two people who are healed, you know I will disappoint you and you will disappoint me. God is the perfect one, and that's why he comes into the relationship. It takes three to get married. It's a great book by Fulton Sheen. He talks about this. He's the third person in your relationship. He's what brings you guys together. He's what gets you through hard times. Because if it's left up to you guys, it's you're not gonna satisfy each other. You need God in that relationship. So you need to. I like what you said that Gomer wasn't healed with God. God establishes who you are and your identity. And if you don't know who you are and you get into a relationship and you bounce around, you have serial daters who are looking, they're seeking, they're thirsting to fill that hole. There's an empty hole in their heart. And they won't go to God, or they don't know to go to God. And He fills it. And, I'm thinking about the like profound moments in my life where I've felt God's love and I knew that I was His. It's earth shattering. Like you sit there and I like cry because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to show up a certain way. But, you have to have a clean heart. But
Or he'll take you to the desert to purify it.
right, exactly.
Which is,
But you don't have to do anything. He just loves you.
Mm-hmm.
The weight of that is so overwhelming. It feels like a nice summer's day. Like the sun comes out. Like that's how I can explain it. And the sun shines on you. People who are looking for meaning in sex and drugs and money, their life is a never-ending hamster wheel. They're constantly running. They're constantly seeking. They're never happy, and you can see it in their eyes. They're always searching. And love is also healing. Like you can get into a relationship and you have these wounds, but the love you experience that's from God, it heals you. So you have to be open to His love.
There's also signs, like you were saying, people jumping in serial daters, and you can see the signs. And how do you see these signs when you date somebody that's a serial dater? They're radical. They're either at the beginning giving all in and all the attention, or you see the other side where there's boundaries and walls and rules. Well, boundaries are rules, and it's like they have a list that it's it's something you can't fulfill. You have to have wealth. You have to like. I don't think men have too much of a list when they go on a date. They're just more like, unfortunately.
Respect is just the number one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but I think also men go there with knowing their intentions. Like, yeah, I want to go there because I want to have sex with this. They don't have a list for that. Because of that reason, they don't have a list. They're just trying to, like, get in access, and they'll say whatever they have to say to gain access. But this is where it also, when you get a woman that's a serial dater, they have this list of demands. Like, you gotta be this, you gotta be that, and that shows their insecurity. It's not, because there's a difference. You have confidence, you have pride, and you have ego, and you can tell the difference where things come from confidence and where things come from ego and pride. These two things are destructive. They're not like an open hand. They're more like a fist, like a wall. And then, like I was telling you guys, and you have a wall where you build yourself to feel safe, and then you create a rule. And that rule is the list of demands you put to protect yourself even more. So you can't even get out and you can get in. And also, everyone that comes and question your wall, you have all these rules that others have to first abide by them, and then you create questions about that. So it further pushes people away. And confidence, on the other hand, is, you can see it is not in the any of the extremes. It's just open, and it seeks to understand and ask questions, and is curious, and it it brings the friendship out first. You can see in the patterns of behavior when you really find somebody confident, you you can see that that person is genuine. They're telling their stories about their vulnerabilities, and they're making fun of it because it was a past time where they learned, and they'll tell you, hey, I learned this. And something, they will even, be interested about you and your past. How did you become this? And all they seek is that you can be yourself too. And create they create a circle where they can both, communicate, like a bridge that's open for both sides. And that's how you notice if somebody is not somebody that is trying to jump from one relationship to another, or they haven't healed well enough, because they're not on the both extreme. And you guys can see this, like somebody that's not healed, and let's say young lady that has had issues with their father. What did they see? You can see it. They're outgoing. Or on the other hand, they are very protective of themselves. And you can tell, like, if you see this, these are signs that that person might need more attention. If you get into a relationship with that person, be be uh, be conscious that that person might need more love, more attention, more understanding. And you have to have your question is like, are you willing to sacrifice for that? And Hosea understood the sacrifice of being with Gomer. He knew that she was broken in too many ways. She knew she was a sinner, and he understood the consequences, of being married to Gomer. So also going into relation, understanding, are you capable of sacrificing? But at the end, the reward doesn't come just from the Gomer. It comes from God. God is going to come and say, well done. You trusted me in the process. Now, guess what? Your wife not only going to be loyal to you, but with that, she is your blessing. Now she trusts you 100%. Now she would listen, and you also listen to her. Now the walls are no longer there, because there's a bridge that you created where you both feel free to go from one point to another. But then you also have God that has created even a more sustainable bridge, which gives you extra security for your relationship.
Mm.
So I do think you have to look at the behaviors when it comes to these things.
I also wanted to mention too, like, even though men, they don't have a list of like things they look for in a woman, they want a good woman, and that's why I think this story is so radical because God was like, go marry a prostitute.
Yeah.
You know, like a man wants a good woman, like he wants a woman who stands for something, or who's good-hearted, and or like a prayerful woman, and he like God's like, Gomer is a prostitute, and I want you to marry her, and he's like, okay, like I'm sure you have a great plan in mind. Um, and to touch back on what you were saying about the two groups, I think women's like femininity has been under attack from the devil for a long time, and you know the radical women, they don't see it, like they've played right into this huge like attack on themselves, and they think that they're standing up for something and they're not, because you know, just to go back into history, but like Margaret Sanger, like she promoted the sexual freedom and promiscuity and the birth of birth control, like the conception of birth control. And she literally was saying, like, Hispanic people and Black people are not, like, they shouldn't procreate. And, like, her ideas were formed in, like, eugenics, and she had a eugenicist mindset, and that was the purpose of birth control. And that's still today, that birth control and abortion clinics are in underprivileged neighborhoods. And she and Sigmund Freud and all these people came together, and they're like, oh, like, they don't deserve to procreate. And from that point on, you see the breakdown of the family and women being brainwashed into thinking, like, in order to be like a man, you need to be sexually free because men don't have the consequences that women have. And they do it. And these women, like the feminists, I'm like, you really need to do your research, because you're not doing your research. You're literally repeating rhetoric that was against your own minority class, and you're just entertaining what they were saying, and they were white, you know, and it gets me so riled up. But women thinking that they can be men, that's what they morphed into. Like, I can be sexually free, I can be dominating. Mind you, women, they're so beautiful because of like their differences. There are differences. We can bring life into the world. Men can give life as well. Like, there's a beauty there, and that's what's under attack. And the more that we reject who we are, the more God comes after us, and he's like, I'm here for you guys, and I love you. That's where I think women are at right now. Like, they're fighting to be like a man, but in reality, they're living out what these people intended for us.
You know, I love your perspective. I'm going to bring it to Kevin too. It's like I was referring more about the LGBTV community.
Sorry, I was like,
No. And the reason being is because obviously they have a different moral standard. That's fine. Whatever you want to measure yourself with, you know. But I have also met people in the LGBTV community, Christian ones, that have given up that sense of lust, and they have found what God intends them to be and to fight those temptations they have. Not everyone. That's why I don't want to be specific like everyone. No, there are exceptions that they go through the struggle. They go through the Hosea struggles every day to not give in to those vanities, right, that they lust for. But what I'm referring to is, like, for example, men are so condemned about being promiscuous, but then you have the LGBTV community that is beyond. It's a common behavior, and they're not chastised as much as men are, and that's what I'm referring to a lot. And as a matter of fact, you watch a movie, it's seen out there. You know, it's put out, and it's almost like a normative. But when men does it, it seems like it's more of a villain type, and it's portrayed that way. And I get it, you know. Men, when they had the opportunity to be just, they weren't. You know, they were cheating on their wives, they were leaving kids behind, you know, and they had to reform the laws for that. So we weren't good at it. It was because of the reformation of the law that men became more conscious and changed the behavior. But you're going to start seeing the same thing happening with those that are not enticed into that law. You'll see how they become corrupt, and then they got to reform the law to reestablish the behavior where it's not abused. And it's common. You're going to see it not only with men, feminists, LGBTQ, and other groups. Whoever has the power is going to be corrupted by it. And I think that's also what Hosea teaches us. You know, Gomer thought that she was free and that she had power and she could do everything she wanted. But what was the price to pay? You know, and the worst thing is that Gomer didn't believe she needed to be rescued. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
One of the things of I was going to refer back on to a point where you say like that they when Hosea redeemed Gomer, Gomer trusted Hosea more to open up to actually have that loyalty, that stuff to it. Um, so one of the things that had me thinking with that is like, it's a true. I think that's a true statement based on that with the trust part, because like Israel didn't fully trust in God in the beginning, and that's why they were probably like going over to Baal a lot of time, because in Baal is something that they knew, for God is not something that they knew but had to trust, and that's something that happens a lot of time. I mean, that's faith and belief, right? Faith and belief is something that you have to trust in, um, versus something that's like eagle god. The eagle's actually there in the air, right? Versus something like that. Um, so I think like the love is so strong that even through, even sometimes you have to go through the redemption part to build that point of trust. Like sometimes a person could be like so hurt they don't think anybody's gonna um, be by that wall or be like near that wall. Like that wall might have like so many spikes out on it. It might be fortified with turrets on top, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And that person that's trying to go to the wall and tear it down is they're gonna be shot at by the turrets, hit at by the spikes. Um, Same way that Hosea was to Gomer in the beginning, shot down by the turrets, hit by the spikes with the children and stuff that's all around. Like until he accepted her, and broke down the wall and said like, you know what, like I'll still love you through all this. And from loving you, the wall slowly came down. The trust is being built in. Um, so sometimes you like in God's world and in God's character, in the characters that are in the Bible and the people that are in the Bible, and all those, it's like God shows us like, you know what, like He's gonna give us the way to trust Him. You know what, when we fall, even at the hardest, like God will still love us and show us to show us that we could trust in Him from His love. And I think that's God's biggest message: trust in God. From Hosea and Gomer, Hosea trusted God, and from Hosea's trust in God, Gomer's trust in Hosea, which then brings Gomer over to God. So I think of trusting God is a big one in that piece.
I like that.
Yeah.
But also teaches us that love is a decision.
Yes.
So most people assume that love is just an emotion that you should abide by, but so is happiness, so is sadness, and these emotions can go. That doesn't mean they need to be there forever, but you make a decision to love somebody. And Hosea, when he was instructed, he made that decision to love Gomer no matter what. He never questioned it, he never asked why. I'm pretty sure he lamented because he must have felt awful. But where did he go to? His refuge was the Lord. You know, he went back to the source of infinite love. And we got to ask ourselves, and when we, and that I think what's the difference. Gomer went to Baal, and Baal was empty. Couldn't offer anything. couldn't even give you 1 inch of what God can give you. But then Hosea teaches you, like, even though I'm being betrayed by somebody I love, I go to the Lord and I'm refilled and I'm ready for the next day, for the next battle. Like, the importance of, who you invest in, the importance of, who you invest in, and I want to ask you, like, how often do you think we go back to that source of infinite love in our during when we are the Gomers? Not the Gomers meaning like we're going out there cheating, but when we're doing something that is unfaithful to God. What do you guys think about that?
For when we're the Gomers.
Yeah, like for example, Gomer at the beginning chooses lovers that bring nothing. They can't offer you anything. They can't offer you salvation, healing, because you can see she's destroyed.
Yeah.
She's morally destroyed. She is ethically destroyed. Her only conviction is serving Baal that is empty. There's nothing there. So you're serving emptiness that can fill you up. But then you see Hosea, on the other hand, always trusting in God and getting his cup filled, even when he's hurt, even when the king is telling him that he is wrong and everyone is against him. Like, he's very unpopular. That's another thing. Hosea is very unpopular. You know, that's a different perspective. What you guys think about that? That the whole town is against him, but he relies on God. That is more important.
Nobody likes the prophets of the Bible. They're always like
Yeah,
rejected and
prophet.
kicked
Like,
to the side.
I can imagine, like, when we saw prophet coming, like Jeremiah, who says like haters, like, yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about today, I remember like one of the first things that Trump did when he just was elected was release the pro-life people who were imprisoned by the Biden administration. There were people who were just praying outside of abortion clinics and they were thrown in prison. And like they were left there and like their sentence was for 3 years and they for praying. And then when Trump came into office, he let them out. And I believe in the UK, I think they said like it was like outlawed to like pray like over there too, like by abortion clinics. And I think they're the ones today who are being hated and rejected and treated like the prophets in the Bible. Because nobody right now, like everybody's hearts is so closed off to the concept of life. It's mind-boggling. And I think that's because like today, our generation is honestly similar to what's happening in the Old Testament. They're idolizing false idols again, and part of that's child sacrifice. Like abortion is child sacrifice, and that is why it's so thirsted after right now and fought for as like this is a need because that's what like it's being like sacrificed to the evil one. Every abortion is like done with so much.
It's like a Baal moment.
Yeah, but I think every time because I just want to say like the women who have abortions like there's so much mercy for them, you know, and I think a lot of them are lied to or they're just afraid and I think like there's so many resources out there for them and these women and I love these women because they're in such a tender place first of all and a lot of them don't have support and there's resources for them and my heart goes out to them because God's for the Gomers like God's mercy is there for them and they're not abandoned, they're not alone, they're not shunned from society either. Like they're embraced. But I do think the crowd who's encouraging them to go and lying to them, and because ultimately only the women who have had abortions understand the truth of what has happened, and that's why they're so scarred. I think the people lying to them have a big price to pay with God, and it's actually really sad. But I just want to say, like, women who've had abortions, like, you're loved, and God's mercy literally engulfs you, and there's so much love there for you guys. But every time we sin, I think we forget God's love for us. And think about it, the just man sins 7 times a day. So like God knows like what he's working with. Like we have a weakness to ourselves. We are prone to sin. And that's why his redemptive love is so beautiful, because he's like, I'm working with you and I'm loving you through it.
With Hosea not being too popular in the crowds and being too much in the neighborhoods, I question like, how do you win over the herd? And the herd is like a mob, and when you have a mob mentality, uh, an idea that overshines or overshadows a different idea would will come over through to we'll just be won over by the mob. So Hosea, his prophecies were shadowed by the different type of mob that was there. And I think that was the hard part for Hosea, because like you see that in a lot of the prophets, like a lot of the prophet. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to believe in the prophets too, right? Like imagine you're living in that time, and again, like things are going well, things are going great, but are they being done right? Are they being done in the good way? I mean, the prophets are there saying like they're not being done right. Like the whole world is saying like, oh no, it's going well. Like look what's all around. But the prophets are there saying like, no, it's not going well because then we have this that's not being done right. Because this is what's affecting these people over here. And forgetting that these people over here is what farms out these people over here. And now the whole ecosystem of that piece or that system, that the civil war was kind of like the ecosystem's now kind of broken up because you think that it's going well in the wealth area, but you're missing out in the water area. So like that's kind of like how you win over the crowd that just sees the wealth, but they're about to enter into a drought. Right, and the prophet is saying like, "Yo, there's a drought coming. Like, there's a spiritual drought coming." And most people don't want to hear that. When we hear bad news, when things are going good, it's like, no, I don't want to hear bad news.
Negative.
Yeah, you mean negative right now? Like, no, that's good. There's good news around everywhere.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because one of the things I see also with Gomer and Hosea is how often, I can tell you this, in the Christian churches, how often does the Christian community go out for those Gomers out there and commit to give unconditional love? As a matter of fact, when somebody that doesn't dress upon what people are used to seeing in the church, the first thing they do is they look and they judge with their eyes, even though they haven't judged with their mouth.
When I used to come on my skateboard.
Exactly. Like, does it matter how you come presented? If you're the Gomer, what is Hosea teaching us? What is God teaching us through Hosea? It's like, you got to go out there and remember to love that person so you can help them convert into Christ. I think that's also the moral of the story. Like, how often we see somebody out there that is a Gomer, and we could be the Hosea instrument, and we're not following this beautiful teaching of the Lord with us through Hosea, saying everyone is worth it. Although you can see, like, for example, I can assume that Hosea saw Gomer as a prostitute. But when God gave him his vision, say, that's going to be your wife, his vision changed. That's my wife. I need to love her unconditionally. So we can choose to look, when we have a relationship with God, we're going to look at Gomer as our wife and not look at them with our human eyes. That's a prostitute. So I do think that's also a big symbolism about Hosea's story. It's like, with what eyes do you choose to look at someone? Like, are you there to judge them, or there you have a choice? You can love them or judge them. And I see this a lot, unfortunately, in the Christian churches. Like it's one of the most judgmental places you can go. And I tell you this, and this is the reason why um, it's hard for me to find like the right church because I see this, and I was like, why we're not going out there where what Jesus used to do, go to the red zone and try to get, because he said, I come here not for those that are not are healed. I come here for those that are sick. He's talking about Gomer. He's talking about the Gomers that are in drugs. He's talking about the Gomers that are prostituting themselves. That's what, and God is so good to us. He gives us so many examples of how we need to reach out to the Gomers of the world. What are you guys thinking
I just had
about
a just had a vision of like two rooms or two places, and two buildings. Like one of the buildings is I wrote it's like it is all like white and gold and things like that, and people are in it. They're dressed nice. Just imagine like a Greek building, and like they're wearing like their all Greek stuff. Um, they're in there, and it looks amazing. But then I don't think like God's really well. God's in that place, but He's not actively in that place. And then there's like another building that just came up, and it was an abandoned building. Like you have the lights hanging and things falling, people on the floor, and God's kind of like in that building next to a person, like saying it's gonna be all right. Hey, you come here and help, or things like that. I think like we need to be those people in those places to assist God with those people that are laying on the floor. For example, like the junkies in a way, like those are people that fell into a different sin. The the strippers and the prostitutes, those are the people that fell into a different sin. Even the pimps, like that's again like those are other people that fell into a different sin. Like if if they could do all that for bad, for evil, like they could also do it for good. It's just they just need a different outlet, a different way to present it. I mean, like a stripper is a marketer. Should market something else in a different way. Like
just like what Autumn was saying about the porn star.
yeah, transfer it into a good way. You can go to this.
That's the thing. We can't see that. What God sees. We have like can't see beyond.
We'll put a bubble around the people. We say like, oh no, don't come near me, in a sense too. Like a junkie that maybe wants to talk to you on a train or something, right? But they might, I don't know, like off first impression, you're like, I hope this guy doesn't sit next to me, and then next thing you know, the guy or gal, both like they could be homeless or junkie, either or. Next thing you know, they sit next to you and they say hi. Most people will just go like, right, but then some people will have a conversation. And it also depends because sometimes it's a dangerous situation. Like sometimes it's dangerous when they go like, and something like that versus like hello, like it's you gotta read out the moments in the red zone too. Like the red zone's the red zone for a reason.
But also it's important to be close to what Hosea was with God, because you have to understand, you have to have that armor of God.
Yes.
To be able to not only be able to convert, but also be strong enough to not be converted into evil, because you're the exposure. But this is why it's important that you have that relationship with the Lord. Hosea is teaching us this. Like, I was married to a prostitute, and she must have had all these habits.
She probably had demons around her too.
No. Also think about this. Think about, like, for example, the first day of them having sex as a married couple. She has all this experience. Hosea wasn't the most experienced in that realm. As a matter of fact, that was his wife, his first wife. No sexual experience. There's a difference between sex and making love. And although Gomer must have thought I'm an expert, but she didn't know how to make love. She know how to have sex, which is different. So also you, as our responsibility is to, empower ourselves through God, to go into these places, to be structured in a way and disciplined, to know that when we go there, temptation is going to be everywhere, but we know that we are an instrument of God.
It's beautiful. One of the points I just remembered. So the woman who her testimony is so beautiful, but she used to be um, active in pornography, and then she was so broken, like her heart was so broken, and God broke through to her in such beautiful ways. And I think she mentioned too, like the pivot of her conversion was that she felt God talking to her and to turn to like Revelation, and she did. It's about Jezebel and like how the spirit of Jezebel is gonna go to like hell if she doesn't like repent or something, and it really like convicted her. But she said because so she ends up having her conversion, and then she meets her husband, and she said they waited before they had sex uh, in marriage. So she say like waited, and then I think her friends were like, "Oh, are you excited?" And she's like, "I'm actually really nervous." And she was explaining like the spirit that was in her, where she knew what she was doing and doing all these things. She was like, it was cast out of her. So she felt like she didn't even know anymore like how to partake in that. And then she said like on their wedding night, she felt like it was her first time, and she said like God restored her purity. And it's so beautiful to think about because we don't know the depths of God's merciful power. Like He can do anything. Like in our thinking, we're so limited, but He even restored that experience for her, like so that she can experience that with her husband. And that's so I don't know. Like I wouldn't have even thought about that, and for her, it was like something that she had used wrongly all her life was restored, and she lived it out properly with her husband. And so beautiful. Um, yeah.
I can see also like how the devil makes you a tool and how God uses you as an instrument.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually a very good one too. Yeah, that's a very good one.
Oh, I also wanted to mention too, there's always a Judas at every table. So don't let somebody's actions keep you from going to Jesus, because there will always be a Judas character where you can judge something off of them, but don't stop going to the table because Jesus is still there.
I like that.
Interesting.
What do you think, Kev?
Oh.
Tool instrument.
Tool instrument. Facts. you know, for like the devil as a tool, like Gomer was a tool for sin in a sense. Like she was just like when you think about a tool, you use a tool. Like all you do is just like for a screwdriver. A screwdriver is an instrument, right? But it's so hard because even like medical tools are called instruments in a sense, but they play a different harmony, right? So like Gomer as a tool, she was just being used like a screwdriver. She was just being used, or like a screwdriver that's kind of like that makes its screws like are flat in a sense. I forgot what the word is.
Which one?
When you strip a screw.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gomer is like a screwdriver that strips the screw. Like it's a tool, but you can't really like use the tool. The tool, well, like it makes the actual nail or the screw is pure. So it's like Gomer is the tool, is that screwdriver that makes that screw impure. Where like the next screw you're gonna have to have like you need more tension. You need something else. You need a screwdriver plus something else in order to screw the screw down because it's stripped. And then as an instrument, I guess let's use the same analogy with the screw just to keep it around. So as an instrument, Homer was that instrument to Gomer because even he was the one who got through her nail and actually started twisting the nail. And her nail wasn't getting stripped. It wasn't getting stripped like Gomer as a tool to other guys. she was stripping other guys' nails by causing them impurity and sins, and because of that, their nails won't be able to turn properly.
But it teaches you, it shows you how the devil twists to break and how God is gentle to use.
Yes, yeah, literally. Something that I feel bad for, like our generation now, is that I think it's easier to become a Gomer now, in the sense like
And it's cool.
and it's for OnlyFans. Like you think about it like that, like OnlyFans is like they get a lot of money from it, and like there might be a lot of women that are like, oh, I could just sell my body to get money. Oh, they
Well,
like a
and the funny thing is, like, to it's almost like an addiction. People that are addictive to a drug, they don't consider themselves addicted. And in the same way, the people that use these platforms, they don't consider themselves a prostitute. They don't consider themselves to be selling their bodies, to be selling their image, and to be serving the devil in a way. You know?
Yeah.
There's the I like she was trending for a while, but the woman who was on OnlyFans who like slept with 100 people in one day, and this guy like made a documentary about her, and like after it happened, she like you can tell she was like depleted, like her soul was so dark, and she was crying. She couldn't help it, like she just couldn't. She was trying to keep it together, and then she just burst into tears, and she was saying like how she said you could see she was just broken, and I think her mom like helped arrange it, and like obviously she's making a lot of money from it, right? But she had said like she just felt, I think she said she felt empty, and like nobody even asked, like she said we didn't even have a conversation, like it just was like straight.
But she might have a Hosea in her life soon.
Well, and then well, that's what I was gonna say too. Like she can have a restart tomorrow. Like if she gives her life to Jesus, like he'll restore her. But I think she wants to do 1,000 guys in a day, and I'm like, that's what money will do because she's like she'll make more money and she'll break a record or something. And I think the last person who did that, well, the woman who was talking about her testimony and that she was into porn before, she said like the people who are in the like sex work field, they don't live past like 30 something. Like they all end up either committing suicide, drug overdose, or they get HIV. And it's so sad because this is what's glorified right now. And like we had a glimpse into this woman's soul. She's only like 24, and I don't know who said something to her like, or she had said like, "Well, guys gonna want me now, so I need to do more." And that's the devil speaking to her. But I agree with you. Like technology right now, yes, it's amazing. It is really good, but there is a darkness to it because these girls, then other girls are gonna look at her and be like, right, I can do that. I can make quick money like that and just like show off everything. But the men who participated in that act, nobody protected her. Nobody was like, hey, don't do this, or in her corner, nobody said, don't do this. Like,
I want to bring the last question to today's podcast. Do you believe that God was rescuing Gomer from sexual slavery? Because we always talk about how God rescues us from slavery. And since we're talking about sexual slavery, what are your thoughts about, how important, especially we're talking about women being sexually slaves to sex in different aspects. But then you are, like you mentioned, those 100 men also could have been on Hosea and rescued her, but they chose not to. They chose to be the Gomers as much as Gomer. They were Gomers as well. But then, you know, how important it is for somebody and the Lord to use somebody to rescue you from sexual slavery. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it like God definitely did save Gomer from sexual slavery. Uh, Even from their sons or their children that they were having, those children weren't Hosea's children. So like
Mm.
through her sexual slavery, she would just kept bearing like more children that just weren't that probably they would never see their real father in a sense, or they had to, or still like indebted to their father. I mean, Hosea saved Gomer even from the debts from her lovers. So like that's God saving Gomer from the depths of her lovers. Uh, I think God definitely did save her from sexual slavery because she was a sin. She was a slave to her own sin. I mean, we talked about Joseph and one of the pharaohs, one of the kings that were there, and he was a slave to his own kingdom. He was a slave to his own to being a king, and that's why they had his eyes and had him come out, and they killed his sons, and then the last thing he saw was that, and then he actually became a slave. So he was a literal slave
and blind.
and blind to his own king. Yes, yes. So like he saved her from becoming a slave to her own thing, and I think ultimately like that from saving her too also saved like other souls that probably could have came from other men that weren't her husband, like the children, like could have came. Um, so he definitely saved those children as well along that line. Like it was a must to build a holy family. And then from saving Gomer too, Gomer is now saving us from what she went through her experience, just from her story herself of saving the human heart thousands of years later, um, with her story. So God, thank you for this journey, and um, for having Gomer as a testimony to what goes on. We know it's tough, but thank you for giving us pathways and things that go through. Thank you, God.
What do you think, Autumn?
Um, well, I think all the Gomers in the world, including us, I think there's always an ability to start again, and His mercy is waiting for us. And if we're tangled in sin, like He's gonna rescue us out of it, and we're worth more than our sin. We're worth eternity. And then what I also wanted to say is there's always a root sin to something. And when you peel back layers, there's always something like lingering in what you're struggling with, right? Like, so if people, like for some people who struggle with lust, sometimes the root of that sin is anger. Like they're angry about something and like it comes out in lust. But like, so there's always a root sin where you act out from. And what the sin you struggle with, right? Like, maybe it'll go away at some point, right? Like the more you grow in virtue, like the Lord will take it away. But most of the time, and like correct me if I'm wrong, but you become holy through that. So like if you struggle with lust, then and you become a huge advocate for purity and chastity, but really because you've struggled with it and then you've grown through it and then you've resisted temptation, like your armor is glorious because you fought through those temptations and then you were a spokesperson for chastity and purity. And same thing with anger, like when you work through anger and then you're an advocate for patience and listening to people, becoming understanding, or vanity, right? You struggle with vanity and then you become the spokesperson for beauty and for good things of the world. Like it's so beautiful that He gives us a jump. Like you struggle with this, but you can jump off this and become holy and virtuous. And we're all striving for virtue. You know, Gomer is a beautiful example of she was broken, she was looking for love in the wrong places, and then she became virtuous. And that came through like the love of her husband, who was reflecting the love of God and spoken to her heart. We're all looking for virtue, to grow in virtue, and ultimately, all of our reward that we're looking for is heaven. All of us want to be in heaven, right? That's the max. We have our little goals, which is of the world, our daily goals, and then the ultimate goal is heaven. And so, how do we get there? We walk the good fight. We keep walking on, and we live in the world of temptation. We live in the valley of tears. He promises us Himself, and He will get us through. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to be safe. You know, there's a lot of adventure in the Bible. It's all something's always going on. So it's true for today. We have to know what's right, know what's wrong, know where we struggle, know where our strengths are, and then through it all, that we're nothing without Him. And He makes us strong, and He covers us with His love. And thank God for His mercy, because like if He really wanted to, He can just snap us right out, and He doesn't. He's like, "You're my children. I love you." He's such a good God, and I really hope and pray that our generation opens their heart to receive Him, because reading this and reading how sad He is when we don't give our hearts to Him, I really pray that every heart that's hardened towards Him softens and welcomes Him into their life. And even those who are struggling with sin right now, who feel like there is no way out and the devil has you in chains, he doesn't. He doesn't have the final say. God has the final say, and you're worthy of heaven, and God is going to come to rescue you. Reach out your hands to Him, and He's literally right there. Don't be afraid.
I like that. I like that. You know, God is always looking for redemption. He's always open to forgiveness, and He can give a new purpose to your sins. As a matter of fact, like you were saying, create a strength out of it and create a testimony as well. So, that's my major takeaway from the book of Hosea. And I love the fact that you guys really enjoy the book of Hosea's and the importance of the relationship we need to have with God and how we can rescue, ourselves. And what does that look like, becoming a Hosea character, and how can then we go after those that we once were, because we're all Gomers. What Gomer means is we're sinners through vanity, and we all fall into that category. But then, as we grow, we can be Hoseas to rescue others. And as we know, at the Walk, Heights of Heaven, we actually commit to kind of genuinely finding what will be the next topic of discussion. So, whose turn is it? I am curious. It was we're going for a good adventure now. What you got in mind, Kevin?
Who got the Bible?
All right.
Should I pick up this one?
Yeah. Well, in Spanish, but yeah,
Okay.
I can translate.
I kind of do it in different. I kind of like do it in a different way. I'm like, all right, let's see which page opens up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh wait, I'm like, do I want to do New Testament? I like Old Testament.
Oh, you going to the Psalms?
Psalms.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ooh, what's the Psalms
So
about?
Psalms are the hymns and songs that like King David did for the Lord. Like if you go to Psalms 91, I think in Psalms 23 are like probably one of the most known psalms.
Oh wow, so it's a long one too.
Well, it's really long because there are songs to the Lord, and
so we're listening to a musical for next week.
Yeah, so like for example, he will have like people sing, or pardon me, or like for example recite them in the courtroom. Like for example, you can read this one. This is probably one of the most popular psalms in the Bible.
Should I sing it?
Yeah. You can just read it.
Okay,
read it.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thy art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Oh, so we're gonna choose. I'm probably gonna choose out like the songs and Ooh, okay. There's a lot of songs.
So maybe what we can do is choose like a
Uh-huh.
few psalms, and we can go and kind of like
Oh, each of us?
And
yeah,
dissect
like
it?
Good idea.
what about like we all choose 3 psalms each,
Yeah,
I'm
that
down.
works. Yeah.
and that way we can kind of like go in depth with it. But
Mhm.
Uh,
Psalms is literally when David is being chased by Saul. A lot of it.
by
A lot.
Saul or
Yeah.
Paul? Or
No,
like,
Saul. Saul is like the first king like that was proclaimed for Israel. So it's interesting because David served Saul, and he was the one that appeased him when he was chased by demons.
oh.
And then he gets jealous of David, although David knew he was anointed and he was going to be the next king, but he never in his mind he never wanted to hurt Saul. Never. Like it never passed his mind. He always said that that's the Lord's takeaway. Like he would know when Saul's reign will come, will be over. But a lot of these psalms are beautiful because he's being persecuted by Saul with no reason. He's just jealous and full of demons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you chose a really good one, man.
Nice. I didn't choose it. They chose it. Thank you, God. Yes. He guided me to the page.
So you already know, guys. Heights of Heaven, the walk. Our next show is going to be about Psalms. We're going to choose 3 each, and we're going to definitely dissect to the best of our abilities what they mean, what is God trying to tell us, and also what are we learning through this experience. We hope that you like today's episode. To be honest, we never thought that the book of Hosea was going to open such a big paradox, not only about morality, but about God's love and how can we can serve one another better. That's what it's all about. And I love what Autumn and Kevin said today. And we hope that you stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell button, hit that like, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about Gomer. What do you think about Hosea? In today's society, somebody that cheats on you, it's unforgivable. There is no forgiveness. It's seen like a sign of weakness to take somebody back. What will you do if your loved one is somebody that betrays you? How will you handle it? Will you go to scriptures, or will you go to another human being to seek knowledge and wisdom? So stay tuned for next week, and we'll be back with Psalms.
Hey.
Hey.
That was great.
I'm trying to